Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. This week, the programme is a bit more drinks list than menu as we raise a glass to the beverage industry. First up, we sit down with one of London's and the world's most respected bartenders, Agostino Perrone, to find out why cocktail lovers continue to be smitten by the classics.
I think having a solid foundation of classic cocktail allows you then to reinterpret them and to tailor-make them for every occasion, every guest around you. That's why the martini cocktail, the Connaught martini, is the highest expression of the ethos of hospitality.
Also in the programme, we head to the Basque Country to get a taste of its historical cider production.
We know that the Basque Country is making cider from 11th century. Here we drink a lot, and the weather is perfect to have the apples we need to make our cider.
And we introduce our very own resident wine expert, Chloé Lake, for a new regular feature that's a corking addition to our monthly lineup. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. Over the past few years, an appreciation and knowledge for well-made cocktails has shaken up formerly tired drinks lists in most restaurants and bars. But it's interesting to see how this newly found passion, in many cases, consists of rediscovering the great classics of cocktail making, straight from the early decades of the 20th century. Few places embody the glamour and grandeur of that era as much as an elegant hotel bar. In London, there are plenty of old-world spots that embody that atmosphere, but the Connaught bar in Mayfair is a clear standout. Regularly cited as the best spot in the city for a memorable martini, it's a place that has figured out the perfect ratio of tradition to experimentalism for a masterfully mixed result. Italian-born bartender Agostino Perrone expertly steers the ship here. He has now distilled his knowledge in a sleek volume titled The Connaught Bar, Recipes and Iconic Creations. The 101 recipes in the book present his savvy take on the classics, as well as inventive but still eminently classy options. Agostino joined me in the studio to discuss how to handle a hallowed recipe, why reading a guest is a fundamental part of bartending, and what makes the Connaught so special.
The Connaught bar is the place where I worked the most, 16 years. So since the opening, I'm the last man standing from the opening team. I literally was there before the bar was set in place, and I witnessed the artists that were placing gold and silver leaves on the walls. That's why the wall is so special for us, and that's why it's the cover of the book. I think the Connaught bar is a magical place because we like to say that a bar is like a good-looking person, can be beautifully designed, but there is a soul needed in a bar, and the soul are the people. It's us that we work in the bar, are the guests that visiting us, and our ethos is really to create this connection, this engagement in a very genuine manner in order to make you and the guests, when you visit the Connaught bar, make you feel uplifted. We like to apply both the technicality of our profession, which is in cocktail making, is research of ingredients, how to transform them, how to utilize the technique. But at the same time, we like to use the romantic approach of hospitality, which is having attention on details and make sure that every time that you visit the bar, you feel at home away from home. And this one can be through really, eye contact, give you the glass of water at the right moment, understanding if a day you are in the mood of talking about cocktails, or maybe you are in a meeting where you need to be more detached from, your usual behavior at the Connaught bar. So our aim is to read the guest and make sure that they fit for their purpose. And then, as I said, once you are relaxed, your senses, they're more ignited, and you feel more likely to look at things that you wouldn't notice, or smell aromas that you wouldn't notice. And then when your curiosity comes through. But this is not explained every time. The part that we love to do is to make it in a very genuine, soft manner. So every single details, they're set in place, but you don't notice them unless we indicate them to you.
It's so funny. So much of, I think, the real art of bartending and cocktail making is about that effortlessness. It's almost invisibility sometimes. I feel like you have to have that psychological read of the guests so much more than anyone else who works in the service industry. Is the psychology something that also attracted you to cocktail making? What attracted you to the profession in the first instance?
What attracted me is people's stories. I started working in a bar in Lake Como, where I'm from, because I wanted to pay my photography university. So I wanted to be a travel photographer. So I started working in the bar in Lake Como, and I was fascinated by the stories that our guests were telling me. So I was a young guy. I was listening to the story of those successful ladies and gentlemen. They were traveling the world. They were going to London, to Brazil, everywhere. There was my eagerness to go and discover the world. It became bigger. And then I started to study about the history of the cocktail. So you become engaged with the part. You start to study how a spirit is made. So where it comes from, what is the culture there. So it was a connection of element. And the psychology aspect, as you mentioned, is a little bit the key, but because not because you feel like you're a psychologist, but because you want to give your attention, your time to the guest who is in front of you. And sometimes that is the click, giving the right attention to people with simple gesture and simple wording. It creates a very special moment for them.
I want to also ask about your personality through cocktails. I love your description of the martini at the beginning of the book. There's a section, before we get started into the proper kind of big run of recipes, there's just a single chapter dedicated to the martini, which is wonderful. And you say, it's basically the best expression of a cocktail maker's personality. What do you think your personality as a cocktail maker is, and how is that expressed in the cocktails that you make?
I come from classic cocktail generation, so I like to stay around these sort of drinks. Maybe because I like to feel the spirits into my cocktail, and because they have personality, maybe like I do. I think having a solid foundation of classic cocktail allow you then to reinterpret them and to tailor-make them for every occasion, every guest around you. That's why the martini cocktail, the Connaught martini, is the highest expression of the ethos of hospitality, because we honor the classic, because the martini cocktail is the most classic of the drink. When you say the word cocktail, you imagine James Bond with a martini glass in the hand, right? At the same time, we deliver with a trolley at the table. We have a selection of bitter, which allow you to give your personal touches every time that you visit the bar. So my personality is really around the martini cocktail, I would say, Negroni, of course, because I'm Italian. All those cocktails with quite a robust personality, like almost all us Italian.
How much can you actually mess with a classic? Are you allowed?
You can mess in a nice wording, means you can be creative. Or you can mess because you
really
mess it up. So I always say that, which is a little bit of connecting again to the Connaught bar and my vision, our vision. We really want the technical aspect of our profession is become second nature. So you need to train a lot. You need to every day be consistent in learning how to shake, how to stir, how to pour, knowing the knowledge of the spirits, how it's produced, what it tastes like, the classic cocktail, where it comes from, why it was made, what is the composition of the ingredient. And once you own all those aspects, it's like, first of all, your personality can arise because you feel more confident, but also more you are into it, you dedicate time, and more you become intuitive, because your database of aromas and flavor and experience become larger and larger day by day. So when it comes to putting ingredients together, you know which flavor goes with which. You know which technique to use to transform an ingredient in order that you can produce the kind of texture that you want to achieve in the cocktail, so the drink will taste such and such. So it's very scientific and technical, but you need to take it with enjoyment.
Well, how about that flavor database? How did you accumulate yours? What's yours made of? And I suppose, what is your creative process?
So in the book, there are 101 recipes. It's 100 cocktail plus the chaperone and martini. And they all have the same kind of lineage, no? They have the same look and feel. But every year we upgrade a little bit the style of approach, because we engage with different travel, we engage with different people, with different colleagues within the team that could come up with other ideas. And sometimes the one with less experience can throw a very random idea on the table, And thanks to us, they were more structure and more knowledge, we can shape the idea into something that it makes sense. And sometimes we get inspired by guests because they give us inspiration, or we literally get inspired by guests and we create a cocktail with they represent their personality. So really, inspiration is all around us, we like to say, and it really depends on what cocktail you need to come up with.
Let's be honest, how easy are these cocktails to make? And I suppose, as we said at the beginning, so much of having a cocktail is about walking into the bar and the whole atmosphere. So what are you hoping, I suppose, that people get out of this if they do try to make these at home? And will they ever be able to capture it in exactly the same way?
For sure you feel good, because I tell you, this book, you want to speak different languages, like in the Connaught bar. Sometimes you come for a cocktail, sometimes just to enjoy the space and the time. So this book is, it wanted to really deliver this ethos. Perhaps you are a Sunday afternoon, you don't want to make cocktail, but you want to feel in the Connaught bar. So you just flicker through the pages and you look at the photos. And you feel like you're there with us. Sometimes you want to just read the inspiration of the cocktail. So it's like you engage a little bit the reading. And then all the drinks, they are in alphabetic order. And there is difficulty level, 1, 2, and 3. So allows you to understand how much effort you need to put into it. So it can be according the occasion or can be according your level. So this one can be a very good beginning for many cocktail passionate. Can be an inspiration certainly for a young bartender. They want to understand more the process of making cocktail. Or can be upgrade your already mixing techniques.
That was Agostino Perrone speaking to me at Midori House. This is The Menu. Now, from cocktails to cider, many countries around Europe have their own customs when it comes to making a tart drink out of fermented apples, but on the Spanish side of the Basque Country, that tradition is particularly ancient. Cider has been produced here for over 1,000 years. The drink is still very closely intertwined with the region's cuisine, language and landscape. Historical cider making methods endure to this day, but climate change is posing increasing challenges to apple growers. Monocle correspondent Michael Booth headed to the orchards of northern Spain to meet Leire Alcorta of the Basque Cider Museum in Astigarraga to hear more of the drink's past and future. He also met a cider maker at the nearby Zapian Cider House to get a taste. He brings us this report.
My name is Leire Alcorta Belonzaran. We are in Astigarraga, and Astigarraga is known as the heart of the cider. We have 19 cider houses only in this village. And in all the region of the Basque Country, there are 85 producers, more or less.
Okay, so you have like 25% of the cider producers here in this little village.
Yeah, so we know that the Basque Country is making cider from 11th century. Here we drink a lot, and the weather is perfect to have the apples we need to make our cider, because we produce the Basque cider here in the Basque Country. The Basque cider is known as sagardoa. Sagarra is apple in Basque and ardoa is wine. So putting these words together is like wine of apples. So we use acid, bitter and sweet apples to make our cider. Here in our apple orchard we have 90 different varieties.
90?
Yeah. Each cider maker uses between 12 or 14 different varieties to make the cider. Always we mix acid, bitter and sweet apples. Normally we use 50% of acid apples, 30% of bitter apples and only 20% of sweet apples.
And are these varieties that you can trace back 1,000 years, just like the cider making tradition?
Yeah, they are very old. Some of them are very old varieties, and sometimes we have the same name for a place or for a farm, for instance, and for an apple. Normally in the Basque Country is produced only the natural cider. Natural apple juice, fermented. We don't add sugar, gas carbonic. We don't mix, or we have blends with apple and pears, for instance. So it's only apples.
And how do you kick off the fermentation? Is that natural?
Yeah, it's a spontaneous fermentation, and the fermentation in this case is it happens inside the cider barrels, wood barrels. We don't use oak, for instance. We use cherry or apple trees barrels. That's all. Normally the cider is bottled here in the Basque Country. We have a very special season for the cider, and all the cider houses are open. But when the season finishes, some cider houses closes until next year. And they started bottling the cider. We can taste the cider, but not from the bottle, because the cider isn't bottled yet.
So it's super fresh.
Yeah, it's super fresh, but we taste it directly from the cider barrels. Here in the Basque Country, it's very common for us to go to the cider house. It's a very local tradition. We go to the cider house with our family, with our friends, with our co-workers. We go there to taste this new cider and also to taste the traditional menu of the cider house. The same menu in all the cider houses.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me the menu.
Yeah, the menu is cold omelette, fried...
Tortilla.
Yeah,
Yep.
tortilla, fried cod with green peppers normally. Then is the T-bone stick, is the chuletón, yeah? And the dessert is cheese with walnuts and sweet of apples. And all with cider, okay?
Well, and this word, church, you keep using.
Church is a word in Basque, obviously, because our language is very related with cider culture. And it means, do you know what is like a palillo, like a wood stick? When you eat a pincho, yeah, it has like a toothpick, okay?
Yeah.
So this is in Basque is church. Oh, okay. And the reason to call the church ritual is that a long time ago, the church was used to open and to close the cider barrels.
Ah, okay.
It was like the tool to open and to close the cider barrels.
And there's a beekeeping outfit here. I guess bees are really important, obviously, in growing of apples. Is that a problem at the moment because the bee population is so under threat? Do you worry about that, and do you worry about climate change here?
Yeah, we are worried in general because the climate change is a reality, and we have a problem with the Asiatic bee who kills the local bee, and it's a problem because we need bees to have
to pollinate
apples. Yeah.
I mean, we're looking out from the museum. There's a beautiful panorama window over the hillside, which is of course covered in orchards.
In April, May, in the Basque Country, our apple trees are in the blossom season, or they are flowering. Okay, this is the chalaparta, a very traditional instrument in the Basque Country, and it is very important for us because the origin of this instrument is related with cider production. Because, you know, when a long time ago, when they finished crushing all the apples, they took the boots that they have used to crush the apples and they start playing music like this. Okay, and it was like a way to invite to the rest of the farmers to come and to taste the new apple juice. Double and one, okay?
Cool.
So I will start,
All right.
okay? Are you ready?
Yep, ready. Basque rhythm.
Cider rim.
And I just noticed there's a map here of Europe and cider production.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that Germany produced cider
Germany
in such a huge quantity. But the three places that I think of when I think of cider are the Basque Country, Brittany in northern France, and Cornwall. Do you feel a kind of connection with these regions?
Yes. And not only connection, we have connection because the kind of, or the way to produce the cider is quite similar, and they are regions with a lot of history behind related with cider.
Following our musical interlude, Lyra kindly offered to introduce me to a cider maker, Egoit Sapayan. So we left the cider museum, and after a short walk through the village, we arrived at his brewery. I started by asking about the history of the brewery, and Lyra translated, but as we chatted, Egoitz turned out to be able to speak much more English than he'd originally admitted to.
My name is Egoit Sapiain, and I am the cider maker in Astigarraga.
And how many generations does your family go back as cider makers here?
A lot of, I don't know, sure.
They started producing cider in 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
14,
Same family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had no choice. You were going to become a cider maker.
yes.
And how many litres a year total production here?
1.5 million.
More or less.
More or less.
And what's your biggest market globally?
Japan, USA, the North to Europe, French. Yes, French is the bigger.
And looking ahead, the future, how would you describe your feeling about the future of cider?
It's good because, in my opinion, the cider no high alcoholic. Here 5.5, maximum 6. The product is natural with no added sulfites.
I have actually a question from my youngest son back home, because we have a small orchard.
Oh, really?
And he's tried 2 years to make his own cider, and it's absolutely awful. It's undrinkable. What could he be doing wrong? Is it the blend?
The secret is the apple.
The variety.
The variety of pineapple in the cider and the juice. And you are one juice very, very better. You have better apples.
Maybe we should just pay more attention to how we're blending it.
Yeah, right? But you have 6 variety, but 6 variety better. You have 6 problem, no 1.
Okay, thank you.
After we'd spoken for a while, he took me through to the amazing hall, lined with vast, bulging barrels where they ferment the apple juice, and I finally got to taste some freshly made cider. I have to say, the aroma throughout all of this was totally intoxicating.
Do you want to taste the cider?
I'd love to taste the cider.
Okay.
So you're going to pull out the pin. Do I have to hold my cup down here or
Here?
here?
Put the
All
glass
right.
here. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, sorry. There we
No
go.
problem.
Okay.
Oh, that's enough for me.
It's
Yep,
okay?
yep, yep.
It's enough.
You take a little.
Yeah, I'll take a little.
Yeah. Like in your chicken.
God, that aroma is absolutely fantastic. Let's just have a taste.
Now this cider, no finish, eh?
So how will it change? It's quite bitter.
It's bitter. And this cider is a lot of tannic. The local apples here in Basque Country normally are very, very bitter.
And we crush the apple.
We crush
with
the
skin.
apple. We crush the apple, and then we press. And in 8 hours, we back the juice, and then fermentation.
Thank you, Michael. You're listening to The Menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's George Ruskin.
Juice producers are considering using different fruit in their orange juice as prices for the ingredient have surged to record highs. This is due to poor harvests in Brazil and Florida, the world's largest producers, where crops have been affected by extreme weather conditions and an incurable disease known as citrus greening. With global supplies at their lowest in decades, orange juice makers may begin blending their star ingredient with the likes of mandarins or mixing fresh pulp with older frozen supplies. From orange juice to green juice now, as an increasing number of Americans are ditching their morning cup of joe in favour of a smoothie or soda. New data released by the US Department of Agriculture shows that coffee consumption has halved since its peak in the 1940s. The reasons for this are numerous, ranging from health considerations to a change in work schedules. The data showing this trend comes as Starbucks has reported a slump in sales so far this year. Foodies are being urged to book early for a new luxury train service launching later this year in Japan. Passengers of the Royal Express will be treated to French and Japanese dishes made from locally sourced ingredients as they take in views of Mount Fuji and Lake Hamana. However, the service will only run 6 trips from November to December, with spaces on board limited to 30, so competition to secure a spot is expected to be fierce when bookings open. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, George. You're listening to The Menu. Finally, on today's episode of The Menu, we are very glad to introduce a new regular voice on this programme. Chloé Lake isn't just a sub-editor here on the Monocle team, she's also training to become a sommelier. So it felt only right to harness her expertise to guide us through the multifaceted world of wine. Every month, Chloé will be at hand to pick a standout bottle that she feels is particularly fitting for this time of year or is just plain delicious and crown it Wine of the Month. Chloé joined me in the studio, bottle, corkscrew and glasses in hand to kick off proceedings. Keen readers of the Monocle and Confect masthead will know that you're very much part of the editorial team here and you ensure that things are spick and span on page as a sub-editor, but you have a side talent that you have decided to pursue recently, which is becoming a sommelier.
Yes, in a way. So a few years back, was working at Taittinger in France. So that's kind of where my love for wine comes from, I guess. I was working in the export department, and I remember on my first day, they said, why don't you come down to the caves? They're these beautiful limestone, ancient underground cellars. And it was just amazing. And I think from then on, I kind of thought, okay, this is something that I may be interested in exploring. Yeah, on the side. So since then, I've worked at a pasta company where we did kind of wine pairings with food, and recently undertook the WSET Level 2. So that's a wine qualification all about tasting wine, about the grapes, about the different regions. Super fascinating. Learned a lot that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So, yeah.
So if anybody wanted to enter this world and wanted to get this qualification, how would they go about it? How did you go about it?
So really kind of an amateur interest for me. You don't need anything in particular. If you want to do the higher levels of WSET, I would suggest having some good background. But for level 1, level 2, you just need an interest really and kind of be ready to study for the exam at the end. But yeah, it's nothing required, just an interest in wine and a passion, I guess.
Well, we're going to exploit that passion of yours.
I'm excited.
Launching this very special new segment of the menu that we have rather imaginatively called Wine of the Month. Does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do trust you to choose the one bottle that for the month we think is the absolute best.
Yeah.
To bring along to a dinner party, to pop open at home, and, you know, just something extraordinary. And we're starting, I think, on a good note.
Yep, so
this month.
We've got a good one, and it has a funny name as well. So it's actually called Hey French. You could have made this, but you didn't. So it's a bit fun. It's lively. It's great for spring, summer. I think very refreshing. Yeah, I think it's great. So
where does it come from? Because I think I know, judging by the kind of mocking sentiment, I think I know where we're heading with this.
Okay, so we're in northern Italy for this, from the Veneto region specifically. So think kind of Soave, DOC. That's the region that we're in. This specific wine is from Monte Calvarina. So it's from a very kind of small vineyard, very high altitude. So the grapes are cooled in the evening, warmed in the day, creating this kind of slow ripening, lovely effect, meaning that by the end, when you get the wine, it's got this real freshness, real acidity, beautiful ripe fruit as well.
Why the name, then? Why do you think the French could have made it but didn't? I suppose, where are the main differences and similarities between a wine like this coming from Italy and a wine like this coming from France, and why could the French not have made it?
Well, I mean, for one, the French have all sorts of rules about how they make their wines, so that's probably the first thing. Second thing is this wine is made from 3 different grapes. So we've got the classic Italian Garganega, but we've also got Pinot Blanc and Sauvignon Blanc, so 2 classic French grapes as well. So I think they're basically saying, hey, we're taking what you have and we're doing it so much better.
Well, we'll see to that.
We will see to it.
Because I feel like for Par Condicio, we should have a French wine next month, not to upset all of our Gallic listeners, because we do respect the French winemaking tradition
we do,
greatly.
We do.
But in the meantime, shall we pop this one open and see if it stands up to its claims?
Absolutely. We'll have to go through the wax.
It's a very interesting label, very sort of almost like graffiti-like. And a very robust kind of waxing at the top, quite poppy.
Yes, this is actually from the artist C.B. Hoyo. So he's done a few other, I think, sort of food and wine labels in the past. He's kind of multidisciplinary. Does all sorts of interesting wordplay.
Okay, so we're almost there.
Almost.
There it comes.
Ta-da!
Please do the honors.
Okay.
You do the pouring.
I'll do the pouring. I don't have any fancy pouring techniques or anything, so we're just going to go for it.
That's the right sound, though.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, I think we're about even.
I was looking for that, as if we were sisters. You know,
yeah, exactly.
I was gonna grab the glass that had the most anyway, because you do the pouring, but I do the picking.
Nice.
Please, can you walk us through the smell? Because already, even though we don't have the glasses right in front of us, I can smell how amazingly floral this is, but I'm not a sommelier here.
Absolutely. So super fresh, super floral. I think exactly what you'd expect from a wine that's mainly made from Garganega. I'd say there's some honey here, which means that it's that's what we kind of call a tertiary aroma. So things that are coming up as a result of aging. And I think because we have a blend of the best vintages in this wine from the past decade, you're going to get older grapes as a result that have a bit more aging to them. So I'm getting some of that, getting that real fresh fragrance that you'd normally associate with wines from a cooler altitude as well, I think. Also maybe some like dried fruits, kind of apricot. It smells a bit sugary almost and confected, but in a nice way. It smells, I'd say, sweeter than your average wine.
Why would you say this is the perfect wine for this time of year?
It just feels very playful. Again, floral, a little bit citrusy. When I think of summer, I think of stone fruits, and this is, exactly along those lines. Yeah, spring-like with the flowers, and just fun, I think, to be drinking outside. You don't necessarily need any food with it. It's kind of the thing you'd pop open with a few friends on the terrace and have a laugh.
Well, we're in this cozy studio, but I feel like we can still evoke that feeling. Yeah. Shall we give it a taste?
Yeah.
First of all, dispel this myth for us. Is there a specific way that we should be tasting the wine? Do we need to do any sort of movement in our mouth to experience it best?
Technically, I guess so. The experts would say that you need to give it a swirl, give it a sniff, and then when you take the wine into your mouth, you want to suck in a bit of air at the same time. What that does is it opens up the palate and gets the air into the wine so you can taste more of the flavors. But really just enjoy it in the best way that you can.
And this really is delicious.
Yeah,
and very different from the smell as well. What would you say changes there?
So with wines, I think it's important to remember that on the nose, you might not always taste the same thing on the palate. I think to me, this tastes a little bit more mineral on the palate. And with this wine coming from a mountainous region with a lot of altitude, volcanic soils, that's something you'd expect. When there is less water present, it means that the grapes will have to fight, essentially, to retain their water. And what that does is create this sweeter, riper grape and therefore retains more of the flavor as well. I think it's a real reflection of the volcanic origin soil composition and also the environment as well.
It's interesting because it's not too sweet, but it also is very characterful. It's not just dry and simple. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of kind of aromatic aspect to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely there is. As I say, I think as well with this being a blend, a lot of people look down on blends and say, oh, well, the purists might go, I only want 100% Chardonnay or Riesling. But actually, sometimes you can get a lot out of a wine that comes from different grapes because you get the best from each of them. So you're getting that kind of intensely aromatic Garganega, but you're also getting a bit more acidity from the Sauvignon Blanc, and it's all coming together to create this beautiful balance that we're tasting.
You've changed my mind about blends because as a kind of an Italian born and bred, we're very much taught that blends do not belong on the wine list. But here it certainly does. Well, it's a wonderful wine to get us started on this journey together.
Absolutely.
And yes, let's venture to another country next time. But for now, let's revel in this obvious pandering that you've done to me with choosing an Italian wine for the first installment.
Yeah, you've got to kick it off strong. So,
cheers to you, Chloé.
Cheers.
And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show, Food Neighborhoods, for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This program was produced by Monica Lillis, and our sound engineer was Mariella Bevan. Thanks for listening, and until next week.